If you were to ask different Sonic fans what their opinions are about Sonic's journeys of the 2010s, you're probably going to get a load of different answers. Sonic's recent adventures have been inconsistent to say the least, and Sonic Lost World is right in the middle of that era of inconsistency. I recently had a desire to revisit this game, primarily to see if my opinions of it have changed since my days exploring it as a child. Is Sonic Lost World a solid game? Is it garbage? Is it something that only those residing in hell should be forced to experience? Well, let's get into it. Somewhere in the skies above the middle of nowhere, Sonic and Tails are chasing down Eggman because the latter stole some animals. I guess it's really hard for the writers to come up with something interesting for these characters to do. Eggman shoots down the tornado during the fight, forcing Sonic and Tails to crash land on the Lost Hex, a location so unbelievably obvious I have no idea how it's still considered lost at this point. Eggman returns to his lab where he appears to be working with a group of strange-looking creatures to build an army large enough to conquer the world. Gee, how original. By the way, why did the devs bother to conceal the appearances of the members of the Deadly Six? They don't even do a good job of it, and the reveal later is so underwhelming that it just feels even more pointless. The purple one is Zaz, but don't be upset if you can't remember his name, I sure as hell didn't until I reviewed the footage for this. Zaz attempts to beat up Sonic at Eggman's request, and you can probably guess how that went.
I can't believe it!
After that, we get a cutscene dedicated to Tails kissing his own ass and reminding the audience how intelligent he thinks he is. Eggman insults Zomom for being fat as if he's one to talk, and sends him to take care of Sonic next, and you can guess how that went.
We gotta go! It's dinner time!
At some point, Eggman builds a giant machine that can steal energy directly from the world below. This is a good time to mention the really lazy presentation of some of these cutscenes. Why is the background nothing but a black void? Did Eggman run out of money such that he could only afford to light up 5% of his lab? The cutscenes and outdoor areas look totally fine, so what the hell happened? After Zomom gets his ass handed to him, Eggman tortures the Deadly Six using a mysterious conch as a consequence for their failures. Sonic runs up and kicks the conch away, allowing the Zeddy to take control of Eggman's mechs and use them against Sonic and company. The Deadly Six then take control of Eggman's lab and use his machine to leech the world dry and take all of its energy for themselves. Master Zik rolls into Tropical Coast to challenge Sonic, and you can guess how that went.
I've been trying up till now.
Okay, I won't make that joke anymore, promise. Eggman tells Sonic they need to work together to take down the Zeddy, which Sonic and Tails agree to reluctantly. They head to one of Eggman's factories where Tails goes on an irrational rant against Sonic that solidifies Tails as one of the most annoying characters in this game. Sonic meets Xena and you know the rest. Eggman proposes they destroy the Lost Hex to kill the Zeddy, but Sonic says no because of collateral damage. Meanwhile, the Deadly Six decide to set a trap for Sonic to capture him and transform him into a robotic slave. By the way, where in the hell did the Deadly Six get these recordings of Sonic? One might assume they were taken by Eggman's robots, but I find that hard to believe since the recordings are taken from the same angles as shown in the original cutscene, meaning either Eggman's robots were in front of Sonic as he was running away, or the Zeddy pulled this recording out of their asses. Sonic's group comes across an animal capsule in the Silent Forest, which turns out to be a trap, resulting in Tails sacrificing himself to keep Sonic out of the Zeddy's clutches. At the same time, Eggman's machine is finished draining the world of life, killing everything in it, including Knuckles and Amy, both of whom I didn't mention until now because honestly, there wasn't really a reason to. The Zeddy strap down Tails and use Eggman's technology to roboticize him, but Tails pulls some really convenient bullshit to avoid it. As Sonic and Eggman approach the Zeddy stronghold, they're attacked by some members of the Deadly Six, leading to Eggman saving Sonic from falling into a pool of lava, but seemingly dying himself in the process. I'll let you guess as to whether he actually died. Sonic takes down the Deadly Six for good this time, only to discover Eggman's machine has already been deactivated by none other than Eggman himself. Yeah, he's still alive. Did you guess right? Sonic takes him down, and Tails reverses the machine to restore life back to the world. The two head home and we get our classic happily ever after ending. I don't have much to say about the story other than what I've already alluded to. It's there and that's about it. The more enjoyable sequences tend to come from the occasional piece of good writing, but even that's really inconsistent and it can only prop up the story so much. The protagonists spend as much time bickering with each other as dealing with their mutual problem, and you might say that's to be expected given their rocky history. But Sonic and Tails teamed up with Eggman multiple times before this, and in each of those cases it was done better than it's done here. This is a typical save the world plot, but there's nothing else thrown in to make it more interesting, so it's just not very memorable. I came away from the story thinking, well, that was something. And given I can't really tell you what that something is, that's probably not a good sign for the quality of the narrative. As you would expect, the Rocky story yielded some Rocky characters, so let's go ahead and run down the list. Knuckles and Amy are so insignificant I'm not even sure why they were included. Tails is unnecessarily combative and irritable, such as when he turns against Sonic for saying they need Eggman to help shut down the machine that's draining the life out of the world. Because who would be better for shutting down the machine than the guy who actually built the damn thing? Eggman is probably my favorite character in this game. I don't prefer this Eggman over the more hardcore incarnations such as in Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Unleashed, but he's the only character in the game who didn't have me rolling my eyes constantly. The Deadly Six may be the most cliched and lazily written group of villains I've ever seen in a video game. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a worse example. Each member of the group exists to fill one painfully simplistic role. You got token dumbass, token fat ass, token old piece of shit, token entitled bitch, and token depressed mess. Zavik is the only one I don't despise because he actually thinks reasonably and his dialogue isn't full of idiocy. But 1 out of 6 isn't good enough when you're talking about the main group of villains in the game, which brings us to the actual dialogue. This game does have some pretty witty and interesting dialogue in some scenes that makes you really feel the emotions of the characters.
I'll get fat from eating your black heart, you Eggman wannabes! I will burn your world, you rebellious scum! I will destroy everything you love and make you watch! Ow!
You can really hear the anger in Eggman's voice here. If the Zeti were in front of him at that moment, he absolutely would be strangling them, and there is no doubt about that. But for every line or scene like this, there are 5 like this.
The only thing that's gonna get conquered is your face, Eggman! That's funny, because I know the perfect spot to kick you!
The last time we met, you ruined my nail art. Now I have to reapply a whole new coat.
One word of helpful advice. Diet and exercise.
That's 3 words!
Hey! Whoa!
As you can see, this game has some extremely cringy dialogue as well. It's not quite as bad as Sonic Colors, which I consider to be the 3D Sonic game with the worst writing, but it gets pretty damn close at times. When you combine these problems, it's not hard to see why the Deadly Six, with the exception of Zavik, were largely forgotten about after this game. Sonic games of the 2010s are well known for their use of gimmicks, and Sonic Lost World is no exception. This manifests multiple times throughout the game as Sonic spends time as a snowball, playing pinball, running through deserts, etc. Before we get more into that though, let's cover the core gameplay first. As far as what you'd expect from a Sonic game, the usual suspects are all still here. Sonic can still zip around from place to place quickly, although he won't be reaching the speeds he did during the days of the Boost era. There's no funny business going on here though, just get to the end of the stage, break open the animal capsule, and you're done. There is a hub world, if you can even call it that facilitates traveling between levels, but it's perfectly harmless and doesn't really get in the way of anything. Sonic's got his trusty spin dash back for this one, along with the standard homing attack and his new kicking ability, which is basically the same thing as the homing attack with a different animation. This game also features a run button. If you tilt the stick without pushing the run button, Sonic only moves at a leisurely stroll, but using the run button allows for a much faster pace. People complain about the run button a lot, but I honestly don't understand the issue with it. What's wrong with allowing players to move more slowly and therefore have better control of Sonic? If the run button wasn't included, those same people would probably complain that Sonic moves too fast and that he's hard to control. Precision platforming is much better with the run button, so I'm glad it was included. While I'm on the subject of Sonic's moveset, I should probably talk about the Wisps for a moment. They suck in this game, and I mean they really suck. There was no reason for them to be included. Ever since Sonic Colors release, Sega has been obsessed with trying to force the Wisps into games that clearly weren't designed for them. Some of the Wisps allow you to just grit your teeth until it's over, but others, especially the damn Rhythm Wisp, are so annoying to use. They kill the flow of the stage to force you to mess around with a game mechanic that's not fun or rewarding. The game definitely would have benefited from their exclusion. Unlike the Wisps though, the parkour system in this game actually functions well. By running into a wall or other vertical surface, Sonic can scale up it to gain more height. I'm not a huge fan of the parkour system, but I also don't really think it gets in the way. Most of the time when it's mandatory, all you have to do is run up a wall immediately in front of you or jump between two walls to reach the next area. The only areas that require technical parkour are those housing goodies such as red rings. I still appreciate the decision to try out a new game mechanic to change things up, even though it was closer to a single than a home run. In my book, this game has better level design than most people give it credit for. I enjoyed exploring the multiple pathways in both 2D and 3D. There's usually something new to explore in each stage that keeps things fresh for the entirety of the adventure. There are curvy tubular areas to traverse, both large and small in scale, along with other areas in both 2D and 3D, presenting unique situations that challenge you to keep on your toes. I do wish the locales Sonic visited were a little more original. You have a generic Green Hill knockoff to start the game, followed by many more generic and uninspired locations. There are a handful of outliers, but the issue is just too glaring to overlook. You can get through any stage without too much grief, but to blow through them super fast, you need to fully understand the limits of what Sonic can do. Many people point out the similarities between the level design of this game and that of Super Mario Galaxy and use that as ammunition to criticize Lost World. I won't deny the connections are blatantly obvious, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. If Mario gets to run around little planetoids, why can't Sonic? It's not about who does it first, it's about who does it best. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying I think this game is better than Super Mario Galaxy. I'm saying the similarities shouldn't be used as an opportunity to prop up one game while bashing the other. But anyway, I enjoy the level design in this game a lot, and it was creative enough that I wasn't predicting everything in advance, so I was naturally curious when something new was explored. It's just a shame the devs didn't put the same amount of effort into the boss fights. The boss battles are fucking terrible, and I mean I hate them with a passion. Problem number 1, they are piss easy. Some of these fights are beatable in under 10 seconds. Don't believe me? Watch.
I'm gonna beat you like a... I'm gonna beat me.
They end just as quickly as they start, which isn't all bad I guess, since at least the pain is over quickly. Problem 2. There are way too many of them. Each of the first 6 worlds features a mini-boss against one member of the Deadly Six in Act 2, followed by a true boss fight in Act 4. This equates to 12 boss fights. Yes, 12 individual moments of torture. And that doesn't even include Lava Mountain, which not only has a super annoying boss fight against Zavok that almost made me rage, but also has a lazy rehash of the other boss fights from earlier in the game. Because for some reason I can only guess at, the devs thought these fights were so interesting they needed to be repeated. Problem 3. You have to listen to annoying dialogue as you progress through the stages in which the boss fights are located. I understand this was done to give the Deadly Six more character, but since the members of the Deadly Six have no personalities as I mentioned earlier, there's no benefit to exploring them further because there's nothing to find. The boss fights were the worst part of the game for me, and they were the only part that genuinely made me angry at some point. Not because they're hard, but because they just get in the way of everything else. And did I mention the Knights DLC for this game is another rehash of these awful boss fights which were already rehashed in Lava Mountain? Seriously? Whatever. I don't need to say anything else about this. I've made my point. Let's move on. Okay, it's time to get back to those gimmicks I mentioned earlier. These alone define Sonic Lost World as a bad game to many. Before playing this game for the review, I had vague memories of how much some of these gimmicks pissed me off as a child, but on this playthrough that wasn't really the case. At least, not as much. Sure, the rail grinding levels, especially the one in Lava Mountain, can be a pain in the ass, but I think that's more caused by the irritating camera position and Sonic's slightly sluggish movement than by the stage itself being badly designed. The Mach speed sections are totally fine, and the floating levels aren't terrible either, despite the controls being pretty counterintuitive to what you'd expect them to be. The only gimmick level in the game that drives me up a wall is the snowball level in Frozen Factory. It controls terribly, and there are enemies around almost every corner waiting to push you to your doom. And using the spin dash in this level is a crapshoot because you can't see Sonic, meaning you can't see which way he's facing, so it's pretty easy to fling yourself off the edge of the stage because you thought you would go one way only to go a completely different way. But none of the gimmicks caused a rage quit, at least not for me. They're mostly just decent with one awful outlier. Sonic Lost World is not a very long game. I finished it at about 4 hours, which is pretty standard for the more recent Sonic games. As I said, the level design is pretty nice, but there are too many things around the level design dragging it down to a point where it becomes difficult to separate the good from the bad. For every moment of greatness, there's a moment of confusion, and this is the biggest thing that holds the game back and keeps it from being a lot better than it is. I don't regret playing Sonic Lost World, but at the same time, I'm not sure if I'm better off having played it. It's certainly not one of my favorite games in the series, but there's a chance it could have been if some of the issues I raised were fixed or at least mitigated. Sonic Lost World earns a score of 6 out of 10. If you have a free weekend and you're looking for something to fill the gap, this might suffice. Or it might leave you with as many critiques as I have, but I guess you'll have to play the game for yourself to determine that. I do consider Sonic Lost World to be underrated, but that has more to do with the insanely harsh critiques of the game, some of which I don't think are fully justified. It's wandering somewhere in the void between mediocre and good. If you're looking for a great time, you're gonna have to search elsewhere.